Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Please note that everyone is going to be muted throughout the duration of today's webinar. If you have any questions for the presenter or for PJR, we encourage you to use the designated question tab within the GoToWebinar control panel. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our speaker. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, and for this intro, and yeah, welcome to this webinar around about how to write a business continuity plan according to this ISO 22301, the business continuity standard. My name is Dejan Kosutic. I'm the lead expert for ISO 27001 and ISO 22301 at Advisora. And yeah, today I'll take you through this the main requirements of this standard, and also some tips on how to write these plans. So, as already mentioned, you can use this question pane to send any of your questions, and you actually do not have to wait for the Q&A session in the end. So, feel free to send questions, at your convenience during my presentation, and I'll try to answer your questions as you send them. And actually, please do send as many questions as you can, as you want, because this will make the webinar even more interesting. Okay, so first of all, why is this topic important? Well, it's important because, if your company does not have business continuity plans, not only will you not be compliant with the standard, you won't be ready for any kind of disruption, any kind of let's say bigger problem in your company. So business continuity plans are obviously a crucial part of BCMS, and BCMS stands for Business Continuity Management System. And today I'm going to speak about these requirements for business continuity planning. And basically this webinar today is intended for professionals that are dealing with ISO 22301, but also for companies that are considering to do this for the first time. So either if you're a beginner or if you are a kind of experienced professional, this webinar will be for you. Okay, so one of my main points today is that this BCP, which stands for a business continuity plan, it needs to be used in case of a real emergency. So emergency could be like, I don't know, natural disaster, like an earthquake or a fire. It could be like, let's say, a man-made disaster. So let's say, I don't know, cyber attack, these kind of things. In any case, you have to prepare these plans properly if you want them to be useful. Because if they're only so to say, let's say dead letter, if they are only here just to show to the auditor, but if they weren't really prepared properly, then you will have huge problems if such an disruption occurs. So my point is really do this properly so that you can actually have a good use of them once you need them. Okay, so let's see the agenda. So I'll show you in the next slide this process, basically the 5 core elements of business continuity, and where this planning has a place in this business continuity process. What are the elements of business continuity plans? What are the roles in developing business continuity plans? How do you structure incident response plans? How do you structure these disaster recovery plans and other types of recovery plans? And at the end, we will have also this Q&A session. Okay, so let's start with this overall business continuity process. So ISO 22301 is in general structured very similar to ISO 22301. So it has, these clauses 4 to 10. It has these, general requirements around, let's say, internal auditing, management review, and corrective actions from the planning side. Of course, it is risk assessment, these kind of things. But there are many things that are really similar to other ISO standards. But there are these 5 core business continuity elements that are specific for ISO 22301 that you will not see in other standards. And this is what I'll focus on in this slide here. So first of all, you will have this business continuity policy, which, I mean, it's kind of similar in concept with other top-level policies, but of course it has some specifics around business continuity. And really the purpose of this business continuity policy is to give a general direction for the whole company for business continuity. So, defining what you want to achieve, what are the general objectives, general responsibilities, commitment of the top management, these kind of things. And I'll send you now a link to an article, which you can, once you click this link, you will see an article that explains in a more detail this business continuity and business continuity policy, and basically why is it important and how to write it. The next step in this process is analysis, and this analysis basically has two main elements. The first one is this business impact analysis. And the business impact analysis, the main purpose of this business impact analysis is to define this RPO, and which kind of resources, which kind of assets you need for recovery. So this RTO and RPO, these are the concepts. RTO stands for recovery time objective, so basically how quickly you need to recover your business activities. RPO stands for recovery point objective, so how much data can you afford to lose and how much data actually you have to save. I'm not going to go into more detail. There is a separate webinar on business impact analysis, but the main outputs of the business impact analysis are, as I mentioned, RTOs, RPOs, and the required assets. And let me try to send you another article which describes this business impact analysis. So, okay, it seems that I can't copy this here, so let me see if I can do it like this. Okay, let me send you now this second article around business impact analysis. Okay, here we go. So again, this article speaks in much more detail on how you perform this business impact analysis. Then the second part of this analysis is risk assessment. The point here is to find what are the biggest risks that are related to your business continuity. So what kind of risks are the most likely to happen that could affect your availability of your resources, of your assets, and so on. And then once you have this information, then you move on to writing the strategy. So the strategy, business continuity strategy, is about preparing, making all the arrangements, all the preparations that are needed for you to actually be ready once you want to recover your activities. Because, for example, let's say that later on in your plans, you write that you want to move your, let's say, offices to a secondary location if there is a disruption. It's nice to have such a plan, but if you don't already have ready all of these resources, all of these, let's say, offices at a secondary location, then you won't have time when a disruption really happens. You won't have time actually to search for such alternative locations. So the purpose of the strategy is to realize upfront all the resources that you will need, and figure out how you will prepare all of these resources so that they're available when the time comes. So this is the point of strategy. And then comes actually the phase where you write plans. And of course, in the couple of next slides, I will explain what exactly needs to be written in these plans. And finally, you have these this exercising and testing. And the purpose of exercising and testing is really to somehow verify if these plans are realistic. Because the problem is that these kind of disruptions, these kind of larger incidents are so unpredictable that it's extremely difficult to write a perfect business continuity plan that will be perfect, that will basically where you will react perfectly. So no such thing exists. And basically for you to be able to improve your plans, then you have to do this exercising and testing of your business continuity plan, so that you can, with each exercise and test, you can improve these plans, because you will always find some things that didn't work well. I'll send you again this link to an article which explains further on how to do this big exercising and testing. Now, what I wanted to show you here is that you can't really focus only on writing plans while neglecting everything else. So you can't write plans unless you already have strategy on how to prepare all the necessary resources, right? Because without these resources, these plans are not doable. You can't write a strategy unless you know exactly what kind of risks you're facing, unless you know what are the RTOs and RPOs. So the point be, and of course, you can't have good plans without exercising and testing. So planning is a crucial part, important part, but it's meaningless if you don't also do all these other parts as prescribed by ISO 22301. Okay, so now let's focus in the other slide, the remaining slides on business continuity planning. Now, when speaking about business continuity planning, you can actually speak about several types of plans. And typically, there are three types of plans that are usually considered as part of business continuity plan. One types of plans are incident response plans. So basically, these are the plans where you describe how you react initially to a certain incident. So, for example, if the fire broke out, how do you, put out the fire? If there is a, I don't know, a cyber attack, how do you initially, let's say, contain the systems, these kind of things? If you have, I don't know, bomb threat, how do you initially respond to such, let's say, a phone call or something? And then the second type of plans are disaster recovery plans. So these plans are basically activated. These are not incident response plans. These are the plans that describe how you recover your IT infrastructure. So, for example, if you have, I don't know, your physical server, how do you recover the operation of this server if you have to do it on a different location? If you have, I don't know, cloud systems, how do you recover let's say handling of these systems maybe from a different physical location. I mean, if the administrator have to be located on a different locations and so on. So basically these disaster recovery plans focus on how you recover your IT infrastructure. And then you have these recovery plans which focus on recovering your business activities, business processes. So for example, let's say that you are working in a bank. You would have disaster recovery plans for your IT department, for your IT systems, and then you might have a recovery plans for, let's say, your loan department, or I don't know, for your trading department, and so on. And basically, when you think about it, the incident response plans are always initiated, activated the earliest. And then after them, you activate disaster recovery plans. And then basically the last ones that you activate are recovery plans. Why? Well, obviously, incident response plans, and you need them right away when you have an incident. Then very soon afterwards, you want to recover your IT infrastructure. And then once your IT infrastructure is ready, then you can start recovering the remaining of your company. Okay. There is also an article which speaks about the structuring of a business continuity plan. So let me send you this article. Just give me a second. Okay. Good. Now let's move on to the requirements. What really ISO 22301 requires for business continuity plan. And just to actually move back to this last slide, just to explain this. So basically, usually business continuity plan is usually not only one plan. As you've seen, it actually consists of several other plans. And you can consider a business continuity plan as a kind of top level plans with several appendices. And then these appendices are, incident response plan, disaster recovery plans. So typically, this is usually how this is structured. Okay, now, what does ISO 22301 require from a business continuity plan? So these all plans together must collectively define, roles and responsibilities, which is logical. Who needs to do what? What is the process of activating the response? So basically, how do you know actually you can start with your incident response plans or disaster recovery plans, it cannot be decided by anyone in the company, because then you would have chaos. So you need to have a clear definition on what is the trigger and who needs to decide on these things. Of course, you need to have details on how to manage immediate consequences. Let's say that in your building, I don't know, half of the building is simply not usable. I mean, how do you manage with these consequences? Details on how and with whom you communicate, including media response. This is typically done in a way that you define a table of all the stakeholders that you have to communicate with, and then you define also who is responsible for communicating with these people. So you might have, let's say, your, I don't know, shareholders, and then communicating with them, you would have the CEO. Whereas you would have, I don't know, your corporate clients, then you would have, I don't know, the sales executive who would be in charge of communicating with them, and so on and so forth. So you would have to define exactly who communicates with whom, including how you communicate to public media, okay? Because this is obviously something that you will have to deal with as well. How to continue or recover activities within the RTOs. So obviously you will have to describe the plan, meaning the steps on how you do it, and also what is the process of standing down. So who will actually decide once you have to stop this recovery, once you actually are recovered enough for, let's say, once you actually achieve this business as usual. So who will be the one to actually make this decision that now it's everything is back to normal, so that you can start going back into normal activities. Again, these things have to be defined. There's also an article which speaks about RTO and RPO. So let me send you the link to this article as well. Good. Additionally, so ISO 22301 additionally requires you that each plan actually has a purpose and scope. It is typically as in other documents. You simply start with the first section, purpose, scope, end users usually, and then you define there this kind of an introductory thing. You need to define the objectives. Typically, these would be again RTOs, recovery time objectives, and recovery point objectives. You need to define internal and external interdependencies and interactions. So what does this mean? For example, let's say that you have let's say that you have your loan department in a bank, upon which other departments this department depends. Okay, it obviously depends on the IT department because of the IT infrastructure, but it also might depend on some other department, like, I don't know, payments department, because you can't really send the loan to a client unless you can send the payment, right? These are internal, but there are also external dependencies where obviously an IT department will depend on the, let's say, telecom provider. It will also probably depend on, let's say, cloud providers and so on. So you have to document all of these things and actually upon whom you depend, and also which kind of interactions you have. Resource requirements, so exactly what kind of resources or assets do you need for recovery. And these are not only IT assets, these are obviously also data, so backups, which kind of people you need, but also what kind of third-party services you need to continue with your operation. Also, these information flow and documentation processes. So basically, what exactly, which kind of information flows to whom, and how you document all of these things. So these are also, this is also something that you would have to cover. And I know that there are many requirements that I'm presenting now, but I'll also send you this link to this white paper. It's called Clause by Clause Explanation of ISO 22301. So if you want to dig deeper into these clauses of ISO 22301, you can sign up for this white paper and more in depth, see more of these requirements in depth. Okay, now let's switch to these requirements regarding incident response. So first of all, you need to define impact threshold for plan initiation. So I mean, in which cases you can initiate this plan. And typically this is done based on RTO. So if your assessment is that your disruption will last longer than your RTO, in other words, that you will, if you don't do anything, that you will be disrupted, that you won't be able to function longer than your recovery time, then this is basically that usually this is the threshold, this is the trigger for you to actually initiate incident response. Also related to incident response, you need to define how you assess the nature, extent, and impact of an incident. So basically, how do you find out what kind of incident you have, how big it is, what kind of negative consequences it will have for your company. So if you have, I don't know, a small fire in one of your offices, but it doesn't really, but it's contained, then obviously you won't have to, let's say, go for some larger response. But if you see that this fire already is out of control, then obviously you will have to react in a very different way. Define how to activate the appropriate response. So basically through what channels. So typically these incident responses are not activated in written way because sometimes you simply can't do it. Sometimes it's simply not possible to do it. There is no time. So usually this is activated verbally. Define processes for handling the response. Of course, what are the steps? For example, let's say that you have a bomb threat to a telephone. What exactly the threats, what exactly the steps are to handle this kind of bomb threat? Of course, you need to have available resources, which is tied directly back to this strategy that you have to write. And of course, you need to define how you communicate with all the interested parties or with your stakeholders. And by the way, when it comes to communication, you also have to think about the communication channels because it's nice when you have all the phones working. But what if your whole phone network is down? What if your smartphones, I mean your mobile phones are not working? What if your fixed phones are not working? How are you going to communicate them, right? And then you have to think also about, I don't know, satellite phones or satellite internet, maybe handheld radio stations. In some cases, you will simply use couriers to communicate and so on. So you have to think about all of these things upfront. Again, this is part of the strategy. And then once you're in your strategy, define what is the, I would say, a doable way to overcome communication problems, then you actually include this in your plan. So for example, you might say, look, we will purchase the satellite internet, which will be used as a backup. And then as part of your plans, you need to say one of the first thing in your recovery plans, okay, start this, or basically switch your internet connection to this a backup connection, which is a satellite based, so that you can actually continue, communicating with the world. So these are the things that you have to take into account. Okay, when we speak about recovery plans, these are you can actually have two types of recovery plans. One are recovery plans for your IT infrastructure, and these are called the disaster recovery plans. And you would have recovery plans for your business activities. These are, let's say, normal, regular recovery plans. No matter which recovery plan you write, you actually have to comply with all of these requirements from ISO 22301. So you have to specify the recovery time objective. You have to specify what are the responsibilities, but not only this, the authorizations as well, because you will have actually different authorities when a disruption occurs. For example, let's say that that you have a case where your let's say physical servers are simply destroyed in a disruption, an incident. So someone has to purchase this hardware in a very short amount of time. And then you don't have to, you can't actually go with your regular purchasing process where you need, I don't know, that many quotes and that many internal approvals. It has to be done very quickly, and this has to be decided by one person, right? So the point is that authorizations, if you have a disruption, if you have this kind of a crisis, The authorizations have to be very, very different, not only related to purchasing, also to many other things. So these are all the things that you have to take into account when writing these plans. Of course, what are the key tasks that need to be performed? What is the minimal acceptable capacity? So for example, let's say that your customer relationship department is able to handle, or let's say loan department is able to handle, let's say 100 requests per day. Or 100 loan applications per day. You can say that, okay, in case of disaster, you don't have to immediately have the capacity of 100 per day. Following this kind of disruption, you can say that it's acceptable to have, let's say, a capacity of 30 loan applications per day following a disruption. And then after, let's say, 7 days or maybe 14 days, you want to increase this to 100 per day. So this is also something that you have to define. Resources, again, IT resources, data, human resources, external services, and so on. Who must be notified? Contact information of all parties involved, because again, you might use, I don't know, Microsoft Teams, but what if Microsoft Teams is down? How are you going to communicate with all the other people if everyone went home and you can't use Microsoft Teams? I mean, do you know their email addresses? Or if the email is down, how are you going to call them? So it's something you have to think through and then write all of these contact information. Of course, recovery steps for activity, and this needs to be developed by a recovery team. So you can't really expect these plans to be written by only one person, and this needs to be a team effort. So typically, each recovery plan needs to be written by the team who is actually handling this whole process. So again, going back to, I don't know, the IT department, let's say that you have a couple of people who are in charge of a particular server or a particular application, then these people have to write the disaster recovery plan for that. If you have a loan department in a bank, then the employees of this department should be, writing this recovery plan for their department. Of course, this is usually, I would say, facilitated by someone who is skilled in business continuity. So you have either a business continuity manager who is coordinating all of these activities, or you would have, for example, a consultant who is helping out. Okay, and then specifics for disaster recovery plans. So what is specific for these technology plans? These are, as I mentioned, recovery plans for IT infrastructure. They usually have the shortest RTO, which is again understandable because first you want to recover your technology and then you will recover the business part. And then you can actually use the same template with the regular recovery plans, but of course the steps in the recovery will be different. And if you have several IT systems, then you can actually use and write these plans for these systems in appendices, so that you actually have, let's say, one disaster recovery plan for your IT department, and then let's say that you have 5 IT systems, you have 5 appendices for these systems. And yeah, each step in the recovery is, of course, determined by RTO of other critical activities. So, for example, let's say that this loan department in a bank depends on the recovery of the IT department. So you have to take a look at what is the RTO of the loan department, and based on this, you have to recover your IT infrastructure basically quickly enough, actually, so that the loan department can recover within the RTO. So in other words, when the IT people in IT department start writing their plans, first they need to get the input about RTOs from all the other business departments that depend upon them. Okay, I'll send you now an article which speaks about this IT disaster recovery plan, and you will see this overview of ISO 27031. This is a standard that is focused primarily on IT disaster recovery. So this article speaks a little bit more about this topic. Okay, now These are in general the requirements, and again, I know it's not very lively and not very interesting, but in any case, I try to kind of give you some suggestions on how you could do it in practice. And of course, please do send me your questions. If you want to get some more explanation of any of these things that I've shown you. But let me now go through some biggest challenges. So what companies typically have the biggest problems with, and how do you typically address these challenges? So one of the biggest challenges was performing a test of the various parts of the BCP. And yes, so typically when you start testing your business continuity plan, you start with these simpler tests, like tabletop exercises and so on. And then each next test has to be, let's say, more detailed, tougher and more, I would say, strict. And in this link, in this article that I've shared earlier, you actually have this, let's say, kind of steps of more and more difficult ways of testing this business continuity plan. But the point is, you have to do it regularly. You have to do it at least once a year. And again, each time you put more pressure, so to say, during the test, just to see if this works out, how this works out. And of course, when you're designing these tests, you have to make sure that you're really testing each and every part of your business continuity, because I mean business continuity plan, because otherwise, if you don't test everything, you'll never know what can go wrong. Okay, some other biggest challenge, management of service providers and orchestration of recovery effort during the disasters. And yeah, there are a couple of important points here. First one is that you plan very carefully during your business continuity strategy which service providers you need, okay, and also how you pick them. Because if you pick unreliable service providers, then well, then you will have problems during the recovery. Second thing is that you, of course, include these service providers in, I would say, appropriate steps in the business continuity plan. Because if you have a business continuity plan that where you actually never notified your telecom provider that they have to do something related to your links, then obviously you can't expect them to react, right? So you have to be very careful when writing these plans that you are involving the steps that are relevant, that are directly directly involve these third parties. And not only this, you should ask them for their opinion and maybe make some kind of joint task force when you write these plans, and basically ask them all the time if these plans are doable. And the third thing is when you do this exercise in testing, that you do it together with your third-party service providers, because otherwise you will never know if they will react in a proper way. So, managing these service providers is again not only a question of only writing a plan. It's also a much wider story. Biggest challenge, developing recovery strategies for critical processes. Yes, so it's not easy every time to figure out, how you will enable all of these resources, how you will enable all of these let's say third-party service providers. But again, I have a different webinar around developing strategies. But you always have to, let's say, take into account a couple of options. For example, when it comes to, let's say, human resources, you have a couple of options there. One is that if you have a very crucial role in your company, that you should never allow yourself to have only one person who knows, the things about this particular activity. You should always train some other people in your company to be able to perform this. So let's say that you have a system administrator who is the only one actually who knows how to deal with a particular system. This is a very bad situation, right? What if this person is, what if this person is not available? What if this person is sick or something? So you simply have to have other trained people who can do the same thing, even this main person is not available. The second strategy could be that you actually have an external provider with the same knowledge and with the same skills that can instantly replace this person of yours if you don't have anyone in-house. So again, there are different, let's say, strategies on how you can actually approach human resources recovery strategy within your company. And there are similar strategies also for your, I don't know, IT resources for other things. Okay, how to produce a sound business impact analysis linking to the risk assessment to justify the ICT continuity requirements. Again, there is a separate webinar that I already delivered for PJR. You can actually take a look at this recording. And the way to produce a good BIA is, I mean, to have first of all clear methodology on how to do this, but then that you have this very clear qualitative and quantitative questions through which you actually assess the impact of a particular disruption throughout time, and then based on these qualitative and quantitative questions, you actually decide what is the RTO, what is the RPO. So in a nutshell, this would be the approach. But again, take a look at this webinar. I also shared this link to this article around BIA, so you can also take a look at there. Also, the challenge here is the management has no idea of what the business continuity is, and they give you a reply that makes no sense. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, if you present to your senior management or middle level management some questions around, okay, give me an RTO. Of course, they're not going to answer you because they don't know what the RTO is in the first place, right? It's the same thing is if they ask you about, okay, give me, I don't know, EBITDA, right? The earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, appreciation. So you can't expect them to speak your business continuity language if you don't explain them what this is. So if you explain them the whole idea, and if you explain them why this is important for the company, then you can actually get a more sensible responses from the management. So I would say this is a question of communication, a question of training and explaining why is this important and how this works. Okay, so as a conclusion, I would say, do not skip any of these steps in the business continuity management process. So, starting from the policy, this analysis, to strategy, writing the plans, of course, and then exercising and testing, because, if you skip any of these steps, these plans will become unusable. So you really have to, make sure that you take this, I would say, holistic picture of your business continuity if you want your plans to work. Okay, very well. So basically, this is what I wanted to present to you. I hope this wasn't too boring, too many requirements. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how this, what are the requirements of ISO 22301 when it comes to business continuity planning, and also how this planning fits into a wider picture of business continuity management. So if you have any questions, I would be very glad to answer your questions. Simply send your questions through this question pane. So let me wait a minute to see if there are any questions coming in. Okay, if there are no questions, then in any case, I would like to thank you for attending this webinar and for listening to this to these requirements. And of course, if you have any questions around, there is one question. Let me just see. So a question from Angelica. After many years testing of our BCP, we're running out of ideas. Any suggestions? Yes, so basically you should try to run your tests against various scenarios. So one of the things that I did not mention during the presentation is that you should, based on your risk assessment, create, let's say, 5 to 10 scenarios, and then try to test an exercise against these scenarios. Because if you just, test against some hypothetical disruption, it's very different rather than saying, look, you have let's say a bomb threat, you have to evacuate your building because of this bomb threat, and then you have an actual bomb at the let's say at the a place where you actually collect all the employees. So you know, it's always something that you have to think about these different scenarios and then actually see how you react in these kind of situations. So I would say that this kind of a way would be a good one to actually further test your business continuity. Of course, if you didn't try already, you should try really doing a test where you really switch off your production systems, so that you're not doing only some kind of a tabletop exercise, but that you actually really, I mean, of course, not during the day, your working day, but during the weekend, you know, simply switch everything else off and then see if you can actually recover. Question from Matt. When you are testing the system, how do you know how far to go in procuring backup facilities? Okay, so procuring backup facilities is related to not really to testing, it's related to your strategy, but basically you have to, you always have to bear in mind your RTOs and RPOs. So for example, let's say when you're designing your backup systems, you have to know what your RPO is. And let's say that your RPO is 0. So, which is a case, for example, for you know, for banks, for their transactional systems. Typically, the RPO there is 0 because banks cannot afford to lose any piece of data for these payments, because they have, you know, millions of payments every second, and you can simply can't lose any of this data. So when you're designing your backup systems, obviously these backup systems need to be in real time. Okay. So basically, this is the way for you to design your backup or any kind of, let's say, recovery facility. And of course, once you start testing them, you simply have to test if you switch off the primary server or anything. You have to see if this if your RPO is 0, that you really didn't use any piece of data at your secondary location. A question from Abhijit. Are there any organizations that provide ISO 22301 implementer certification? I believe there are. I'm not sure exactly who this might be, but I'm sure that you have a lean implementer course or something like this. Okay, if there are no other questions, then yeah, let me wrap up the webinar. So again, thank you for attending this PGR webinar. If you have any further questions around certification or anything like this, feel free to get in touch with PGR. You have this information on the screen. And yeah, so PGR, of course, is accredited for ISO 22301 certification, and you know, it definitely does make sense for lots of companies to go for this certificate. So again, thank you for attending this webinar and have a nice day.